Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, the Wolves have moved on to the Western Conference Finals after beating the Warriors. And we got Fred Katz to talk about the Celtics and their big win over the Knicks and whether or not they can come back from down 3-1. Fire up that boys to men. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S. The Golden State Warriors have reached the end of the road as it's over. They did not pick up the one win they needed to hopefully get Steph Curry back for the theoretical Game 6. They dropped Game 5, 121 to 108. Excuse me, 110. 110. The final score just updating in front of me. The Wolves. They did not play with their food. They got this done.
Took care of business.
5 games. That's what we like to see, especially for a team that has confused us and confounded us all year until literally the playoffs.
Yep. They flipped the switch in an incredible way. I mean, confusing and confounding is basically how I've described them over the last 82 games. That's exactly how they felt. They play with their food often. And the fact that they did not play with their food in this series is a sign of maturity. It's a sign of growth on Anthony Edwards' part, who I think generally didn't have like the most outstanding, incredible scoring game. He only finished with 22 points, but 12 assists, which is a career high for him in the postseason. Think he's been incredible as a passer throughout this season and postseason, if you will. He was great against the Warriors. They were showing too. It just shows growth from his side, right? Like the development that he's been, and we've talked about this a bunch, but him and Randle headed to the Western Conference Finals.
Another big Randle game. And Randle, obviously, like big source of contention this whole year.
Totally.
How's the fit? You know, obviously he comes in for Towns. His playoff fit has been excellent.
Absolutely.
Number one, this guy has brought an intensity on the defensive end that I didn't really know he had. I mean, you think about him guarding Luka Doncic in that Lakers series at times, but his offensive aggressiveness, I mean, he's just been getting them, like just getting into the paint, getting shots up, and then other things are coming out of that for them. I mean, they've kind of got this two-headed attack with those two guys, which I think is what the vision was in New York, right? Like if he could have been that with Brunson, you see how it works. And Anthony Edwards and Randle over the course of the season figured out a way to make this work. And it looks really good. I mean, Randle being able to play bully ball against the Warriors, right? Like they were just too big. Yeah, against Draymond.
Yeah. Has there been a single player in these playoffs that has changed the way we think about him as a playoff player as much as Julius Randle?
Maybe not.
Maybe not, right? Because I've seen everybody quote that 15-game sample of when he was in New York and the shooting percentages. Man, I even mentioned them. The fact that he shot 28% from 3 and was barely shooting well in any of those postseason playoff series with the Knicks. He has completely changed that in the first time with the Timberwolves. Incredible score, very poised. You mentioned the defensive effort. He's bought in on that end. I think he's been a great second fiddle for the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards, a guy who can create his own shot when they need it to. And that's actually a quality that you'll listen to us talk to Fred Katz about Karl-Anthony Towns. That's a quality that is very different than Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns needs a little bit more of a setup to get him going. Randle can get his own shot, and he's showing why that's really important for the Timberwolves right now.
For all the talk about Randle being a spacing problem coming to Minnesota, I mean, he took 6 threes in the game, and Karl-Anthony Towns took 3 for the Knicks, right? So spacing is relative. It's how you use a guy, and Randle's showing a willingness to take 5 or 6 threes a game. I think shows, that guy's out there willing to go along, to get along. It was not like a huge bench night for them. I mean, they really just took care of business the entire time, and it was never really in doubt. Even when the game was closer score wise, like it felt like the Timberwolves just hadn't quite, turned it on yet. And really the Warriors they had a little bit more steam the first, 18 minutes of the game than maybe we expected.
Yeah, I mean, look, this, if anything, from the Warriors' perspective, you can look at this and say this would have been a much, much closer series if Steph Curry was playing. That's the obvious, right?
I mean, you judge it by the first quarter of game 1. I definitely,
they probably think they win it, right?
Yeah.
And so, this was one of the worst offensive series that the Warriors have played, and it's because Steph wasn't there. Now, for what it's worth, they also need to go into this offseason and maybe add some offense, some creation next to him and Jimmy, some shooters that can actually knock down their shots.
Should we not do the thing that we've done for every other team when they get eliminated and say, hey, should they trade Steph Curry? No, of course they shouldn't trade Steph Curry. Right. But let me ask you this, S.
Yeah.
You see enough from the Jimmy Butler partnership that you're in for next year. And I'm not saying like it's unrealistic to think that they would trade him. But what about you? Like, what is your opinion? You like we got to see it for half the season. It looked great in the regular season. I think the playoffs, maybe a question mark.
I think I've seen enough to go with it next season because they were awesome in the regular season. And especially when Jimmy Butler was healthy, I don't think he was 100% after he got hurt in that Rocket series. You could just
see. And also they're saying he had like some kind of an illness the last couple of games, which that tracks because he did not look like Jimmy Butler.
He did not. No. And look, I know the aggressiveness from him wanes sometimes. And again, that's why I think they need to add some shooters and some shot creation next to those two. But generally, they were awesome in the regular season when it was him, those two, and Draymond Green. And so that nucleus moving forward into next year, I don't think they should re-sign Jonathan Kuminga. I think Kuminga looked good.
Yeah.
Really good in this series. But it just makes sense for him to kind of spread his wings.
I think for Kuminga, it probably makes sense, right?
Yes.
That was going to be my next question.
Go to Utah. Get your shots
that's a piece for the Warriors, though. See, this is the thing, right? Like a sign and trade for Kuminga. A lot of people have looked at this from the Kuminga side where, hey, Kuminga probably earned himself some money back that he may have lost in the last half of the season. But the truth is, he reclaimed a lot of value for the Warriors also in this. That's a tool that they're going to be able to use to maybe pick up another piece or two, right? Like when you consider how young he is, and maybe it's a draft pick, I don't know like how much they're going to get, right? Player wise, but I mean, Kuminga had another pretty good game. I mean, it's not the same as what we saw. I think game 3 was his best game of the series because he was playing both ways at a high level, but I thought he was pretty good. Again, showed that he can go out and get a bucket, which is what the Warriors theoretically needed, quite often this year.
Yeah. And look, maybe that's the argument for bringing him back, honestly, is the fact that like, hey, we have this young guy who clearly can get a bucket. How do we solve this issue? How do we solve the fact that him and Jimmy Butler can't work, or the fact that he fell out of the rotation when everybody was healthy for this team? Maybe that's the way they look at it. But I also think from your side of things, you can probably get something in a sign and trade for Kuminga.
Let me ask you a question like before we go to Fred Katz. Let me ask you a question. Who does the Minnesota Timberwolves want to play? The Denver Nuggets or the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Okay, this is interesting, right? Because I think both teams are going to really be a pain in the butt for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But it's kind of like the devil you know versus the devil that you don't know type of thing, because they've played Denver. They know what Denver can be. I think the lack of a rim protector, now you can call Nikola Jokic a rim protector. He's still a big body, but like the lack of Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein makes it so that Anthony Edwards can get to the basket more often, makes it that Julius Randle can get his game off more often. So I think defensively, you're like, give me the Denver Nuggets. That said, this Denver zone is pretty intriguing, and they've done a good job of zoning up on Shea, the box and one, basically saying like anybody else, we're daring anybody else to make these shots. I feel like I would be scared to face that if I was Ant and the Wolves, because they have struggled against the zone. They struggled against the Warriors zone. They had that 20-point comeback loss that they had to the Bucks, which was all zone defense. I don't know. I think that's part of it that makes me say like, it's a toss up. Whoever comes at this point, I'll take it. I feel like they would say Denver though. How about you?
I think Denver is probably what they would say, just because you've got the blueprint, right? You've done it and
you know what to do. Yeah.
Theoretically, this Denver team isn't as good as the one from last year. Theoretically, right? MPJ looks like a shell of himself with the shoulder issue. No KCP, obviously.
They got the 6 guys, right?
I mean, really, you got 4. maybe 4.5, right? Like depending on how MPJ's rebounding. So, I do think that you probably want Denver, except Nikola Jokic.
It's
Jokic might have, spent a lot of time watching that tape. Maybe he's got that defense all figured out. Who knows?
And it's not Karl Anthony Towns this time as the primary. It's Randle and Gobert helping. So it's a little bit different than last year's Timberwolves team too. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited. Guys, stick around. We got Fred Katz, and man, Fred really believes in the Celtics. Let's just say that. Just when we thought the Boston Celtics had run out of hope returned. They win the game 5 that they were expected to lose after the loss of Jason Tatum. Here to talk about it, Fred Katz. He was in the building. Fred, that was a bit of a dud for the Knicks.
It was absolutely a dud for the Knicks. I don't think there's any playing around with it. They were okay in the first half. They got off to an okay start, and it was tied at halftime, and then all of a sudden Boston just completely torched them to begin the third, and by that point it was just done with. Boston shot 18 free throws just in the third quarter. Jalen Brunson had 5 fouls in 1 quarter. The Knicks were put into rotation constantly. They didn't pick up guys in transition. Boston completely took advantage of that, which was somewhat of a problem all night. Derek White was freeing himself left and right. No rhyming scheme intended whatsoever. Boston just played like a much better team. Fantastic game from Jaylen Brown, I thought. Fantastic two-way performance, picking it up with Jason Tatum missing his first game. And Luke Cornet with a third quarter for the ages, 5 blocks in the third quarter for Luke Cornet, with him being the halftime adjustment, with Kristaps Porzingis not coming out to start the second half and Luke Cornet starting there. So, I mean, a bad night for the Knicks, but a really great night for Boston.
I wish Luke Cornet chased that triple-double. I was looking for it. I was waiting for it. I was like, I just need the stat that says Luke Cornet has a triple-double with blocks. That would be incredible. But look, this was an all-around effort for the Celtics. From the Knicks' perspective, it seems like Mitchell Robinson has been a really important part for them this series entirely. Do you think they have to lean on him more? For game 6, is that just the equation here for them?
Could be. I mean, there are a couple of questions that I have after that game 5, and they're kind of all, and maybe there are more than a couple, but all of them involve the starting lineup to a degree. I mean, Mitchell Robinson has been the best non-Brunson player in this series so far. You look at the impact metrics, and it's not even close. He coming into this game, he and Miles McBride were the only 2 players on the team who were a plus when they were on the floor, and Robinson was a plus 35. McBride was a plus 5. And the reason he's a plus 5 is because he plays so many of his minutes with Mitchell Robinson because they come off the bench together. I mean, when Mitchell Robinson was on the court coming into this game, the Knicks were recovering 38% of available offensive rebounds, which is just obscene. It is an unbelievable number. Yes. And you watch the games and you're like, how is it not more? Like, he's just is getting a hand on everything. Their defense is a million times better when he's out there because of his pick and roll defense. And he hit all 6 of his free throws in the game tonight. So obviously that wasn't a problem. That could be something. You go to that double big lineup. You know, Mitchell Robinson ended up closing that first half for the Knicks over Karl Anthony Towns because Towns had 3 fouls. And he was playing well enough and Towns was struggling enough that you kind of forgot that the reason that he was playing was because Towns had 3 fouls. You kind of felt like it could have, if Towns had 2, kind of felt like it could have just been a basketball decision because earlier in the playoffs, Tibbs actually closed a game with Mitchell Robinson. I wonder about the starters in general. You know, the starters all year have been somewhat underwhelming compared to what we thought this team was going to be given its lineup construction. They were only plus 4.1 per 100 possessions during the regular season, which is obviously above average. But the way the Knicks are constructed with the bunch of top tier talent in their first unit, you want that lineup to be a really way higher number than plus 4.1 per 100. In the playoffs, they're a net negative. Coming into this coming into this game tonight, they were minus 22. The starting lineup was in the Boston series. It's going to be worse after the way they got throttled in the third quarter. You mentioned Luke Cornet's success. part of the reason Luke Cornet had so much success is they could put him on Josh Hart, and they weren't guarding Josh Hart and just let the dude hang in the middle. Like we say he was guarding Josh Hart. In reality, what they played was the opposite of a box. It was the opposite of a box and one. It was Luke Cornet was playing his own.
Anti-gravity.
One in a box.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
One in a box. That's what we're going to call it.
Yep.
And it was 4 dudes playing man-to-man defense, and it was Luke Cornet playing his own, which is what they did. Like, it wasn't like we're roaming off of Josh Hart. It was just Luke Cornet's going to play his own in the middle of the court, and he's just going to basically play as if he's in the middle of a 2-3 or something like that. And he blocked 5 shots because he could hang around the rim, and the Knicks couldn't do anything with it.
It was awesome.
The thing about Mitchell Robinson in the series, right? The thing about Mitchell Robinson in the series is that his size actually just mattered so much because Porzingis has essentially been non-existent. He's been able to destroy the glass. And obviously now without Tatum, like there's even more of an opportunity for him, in my opinion, to hit the glass. Cornet neutralized that a little bit in the game, right? I actually think that now this is a Cornet series, right? I think that if you're the Celtics, you go away from Porzingis, who isn't.
What a weird
healthy.
Series. What a weird series.
He's not healthy, right? Like, period. I mean, he looks bad, and it's pretty obvious he's going through some stuff. And Cornet has had a great season as it is. And so I'm not surprised that he was able to have a game like this for them. To me, this is the biggest surprise. I think it is a little bit like Tibbs being a little bit gun shy on mixing things up. You know, hey, look, this got us here. You know, you don't want to mess with the vibes, and I understand that. And it would be very unique, Fred, for the team that's up in the series to make that sort of adjustment. But I think you have to be bold, right? It's the playoffs. Like, where do you go? Is it moving Josh Hart out of the lineup and going with that double big, Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson, or you know, what do you think?
Well, I think either way, if you're going to make a move in the first unit, which I don't know if you necessarily have to, but I do think there's a medium here, right? Like, you don't have to make the move in the first unit. You're up 3-2. A lot of this success that's happened just happened with the starters out there, in spite of the numbers that I just said. Like, a lot of success has come from these starters, including Josh Hart, who was
not against Boston, though.
Well, in game 4, it did. In game 4, those guys were good together. I will say the reason that it kind of has to be Josh Hart is not because of Josh Hart getting demoted. It's because Josh Hart with a non-shooter like Mitchell Robinson just doesn't work. And if you're going to put in Deuce
ostensibly
McBride,
the other big.
Right. Exactly. And if you're going to put in Deuce McBride, then you're just going to go all in on a 5-out lineup.
Yeah.
I think there's an argument to be made play Mitchell Robinson, not because Josh Hart has lost the spot, but because Mitchell Robinson has won the spot and his minutes need to be maximized. And if they're going to hack him, it's harder for them to hack him if he's in the starting lineup as opposed to off the bench, because even if he plays the same amount of minutes, a greater proportion of his minutes will be played when the Celtics are not in the bonus. And that is going to be, that will make things easier. That being said, he made all 6 of his free throws in this game. And maybe you want to, right. I mean, look, they have to go away from it. They have to, look, independent of whether he's making his free throws or not. Because the reality
the math would say you stick with it. You stick with it. Like, if
no, but here's why I say that.
Really?
Yeah.
Regardless, here's why I say that. And you know, I'm not a
I know
poo-poo the math kind of guy. But here's why. Because Porzingis isn't playable right now. He either literally is unplayable or he's figuratively unplayable. And as Mitchell Robinson was getting rebounds and Cornet was hacking him, I was like, oh, they're screwed if Luke Cornet gets in foul trouble. So maybe you don't have to completely go away from hacking, but I do think you have to edit the strategy to some degree because Luke Cornet is picking up 2, 3, 4 superfluous fouls throughout a game. And that theory is that strategy is viable when you're like, we need 15 good minutes out of Luke Cornet, but you need 25 good minutes out of Luke Cornet now. So don't give him 2 or 3 or 4 extra fouls on his record. He doesn't actually have 6 fouls to play with.
Joe Mazzulla is going to give us some like, hey, Xavier Tillman, get that warm up off. Go out there and get us.
Yeah, probably, maybe. Yeah,
he might.
I don't know. What would Ben Affleck do in this situation?
Joe Mazzulla loves Mitchell Robinson too. Like Joe Mazzulla is doing this because he has the highest esteem for Mitchell Robinson and he wants him off the court. But I would just worry about Cornet's fouls with the way that Porzingis is playing. Like, that is an adjustment you're going to have to make moving forward, I think, where you're going to have to reproportion who's actually fouling and when you're doing it and how you're doing it. Because I don't think you could just say, Luke Cornet, take 3 fouls and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can do it. It also allows the Knicks to get their defense set up when they hack. And that's part of the reason why Mitchell Robinson lineups are defending so well, because they're just able to keep their matchups. And look at the Celtics, all the threes the Celtics got tonight. How many of those threes happened? Because the Knicks just didn't match up for whatever reason. They didn't run back. They didn't communicate. They didn't pick up Derek White. They didn't pick up Peyton Pritchard. They didn't pick up their own guy. And so there was a mismatch the Celtics could exploit, and the Knicks had to go into rotation. They weren't switching well either, so they were screwed on that. Like, how many times did they just get good shots?
You would have thought by their effort that the Knicks had been blowing the Celtics out in all these games. I mean, to be honest with you, and instead of these being, the Celtics, like game 1, they have the worst shooting
weirdest
in NBA playoff history. And, it takes this great comeback to win. I think that the Knicks were a little lackadaisical, plain and simple. Did they leave the window open?
I was just about to ask that to Fred. Like, now the Knicks have a little bit of pressure on them, right? Because you are going to Madison Square Garden. You got to close it out. You force game 7, then now it's a toss up, and the Celtics are playing motivated because you don't have Jason Tatum and you're playing for JT. I saw a lot of Celtics fans wearing t-shirts like that too. Do you think the Celtics can pull this off? Can they pull off the 3-1 comeback?
Of course they can. I hate that we as a society are such prisoners of the moment that we couldn't say that of course they can when it was 3-1. I mean, didn't everyone who didn't wear orange and blue coming into the series pick the Celtics? Didn't
absolutely.
Tons of people pick the Celtics in 5? Didn't tons of people think it wasn't going to be much of a series? So
Knicks didn't beat anybody all year, right?
If you thought the Celtics could win 4 out of 5 to win the series, then can't the Celtics win 4 out of 5 to close out a 2-0 deficit? Can't the Celtics win 3 out of 3? Look, I know they don't have Jason Tatum. That's obviously a huge part of this. I feel like we just, because of 2 or 3 or 4 weird Celtics games, we've forgotten.
Very weird.
Who the Celtics, it's super weird. No question. Like the weirdest. But have we totally forgotten who the Celtics are in like a week? Don't we have years of evidence that show that this team is awesome? That they can win 2 games. They can win 2 games against a team they beat 4 times. I'm not saying they totally will. Like, they don't have Jason
but it's
Tatum,
in the realm of possibilities just
because. Of
because
course it is.
But they win without Tatum. They win without Tatum all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
They win without Tatum. They win when Tatum has a bad game. They win. Right? They're super
crushed. They crushed the finals last year. And Jason Tatum was not even like the dude in the finals. It was Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Like this team without Jason Tatum is loaded. This team is loaded. They're really good. They could beat the Knicks. They could also go on and beat Indy in the next round too, if they do that. Like, this team is still crazy good. The fact that we're talking about them like, oh, could they come back from down 3-1? Of course they can. Obviously. As you watch way too much basketball, ask that question.
We gotta ask you.
Come on, we gotta do
your
it.
tone. I disagree with your tone. You're asking me like it's like, no, it's of course
they're the
they can.
Celtics. No, I know.
I'll tell you right now. Look, I mean, you watch Game 5 and completely repeatable, I think.
Of course,
for the Celtics,
absolutely. Because nothing changes for them. They are a well-oiled machine. And the reason you ask these questions is because they seem obvious out the gate. You're like, of course they can win this series, but it's just about the JT factor. It's like, can they do it?
If
Can they
Jaylen Brown,
do it with that aspect?
If Jaylen Brown gives him 2 more games like this,
he was phenomenal. He was
and
great.
A couple of other guys step up, no doubt. I don't know. I have to say, Fred, it feels like it's going 7 now. I don't know why. The Celtics feel like it's like they galvanized together, right? Like it was a different thing last night.
Well, if it's going 7, then the Knicks are in trouble.
Yeah.
Because that means it's going back to Boston for a game 7. And those are not easy to win on the road. So if it's going 7, the Knicks are in trouble. I will say what we have seen from the Knicks side is that when Jalen Brunson goes nuts, they can be in a pretty good place. Mm-hmm. And Brunson was not himself at all tonight. I mean, that sixth foul that he got was so, and his fifth foul too, both of them, so out of character. Yeah. So incredibly out of character. You know, Brunson will play when he's in foul trouble all the time. Tibbs leaves him in when he's got 2 fouls in the first quarter, 3 fouls in the second quarter. Tibbs is really big. One thing that I think is a really great Tibbs trait is he's really good at not fouling his own players out. And he's really good at knowing who he can play when they're in foul trouble and who he can't. And he lets Brunson play in foul trouble all the time. And he, even though, you know, you can make jokes about how Brunson doesn't defend, but like Brunson's actually pretty physical as a defender. Like he tries to get under guys and take charges and all that stuff. And he does all the, you know, trying to be a salesman and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And he doesn't really pick up that extra foul when he's got 4 in the third and he's still playing, or 3 in the second and he's still playing. And the fact that he got 1 on a reach in and 1 on a play where he was trying, and the sixth one was on a play where he was trying to show him recover on a coverage, and Jaylen Brown just knew he was going to show him recover and hadn't even started moving yet. And Brunson still jumped at him. It was like, you know, 35 feet from the basket or wherever he was. Those were very out of character plays. Like a lot of the stuff from him tonight was out of character. Karl Anthony Towns has made 2 3-pointers in this entire series, which is wild to me. I get it.
One today, right? Pretty sure I saw him hit one today.
Yeah. He's being guarded with wings. I get it. And smalls, but okay, gotta figure something out with his shooting.
Look, you're playing against the Celtics, and you know they're going to try to get 53s. Your best 3-point shooter needs to take more than 3. That's just my offensive coaching advice. Figure out a way for your best 3-point shooter to get more than 3 attempts. That's been the thing with them
all season.
Which is why the starting lineup has been so clunky all year.
Yeah,
it's especially the thing with them when they play against a team that is willing and able to put smalls
to switch.
On Towns. I did a story a couple of weeks ago on how this is when Detroit was putting Tobias Harris on him, on how Towns' habits just completely change. Not his production even, just his habits completely change when he has a small on him versus a big, and how that affects the Knicks. How his shot selection changes. He takes way fewer threes when he has a small on him than when he has a big on him. He doesn't get to the line as much, and the Knicks are way worse. The Knicks offense is way worse. When Towns was primarily guarded by a non-big man during the regular season, the Knicks went 11-14 in those games. When he was primarily guarded by a big man, they went 35-12 in those games. That is such a ginormous difference. And when the Knicks fell off at the end of the year, when the offense started to look worse at the end of the year, guess what that coincided with? It coincided with about half the league starting to put wings on Towns, which was something that only really happened with the super elite defenses at the beginning of the year. Then the whole league started to catch on, and everybody was doing it. And the Charlotte Hornets were doing it. And the Washington Wizards were doing it. And you didn't have to be an elite team or an elite defense in order to do it. And the Detroit Pistons did it throughout that series in the first round. And Boston, you knew was going to do it. They did it all regular season. And it is just something they have to figure out the habits. Like Towns takes like 3 threes a game when there's a small guarding him as his primary guy. And that just can't be the case.
You're going to run into a math problem with the Celtics. Again, 3-2, that series, we had penciled in
Boston
the Knicks
Celtics
and Pacers in the next round. No. We'll see what happens.
Who gave them a chance? The Boston Celtics trying to silence the doubters. Who would have ever thought they could make the conference finals for the 907th season in a row? Nobody would have ever predicted it.
The We Believe Celtics, man. The We Believe Celtics.
All right, that's going to do it for the show, folks. Thanks to Fred Katz. For Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour. This has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.